met Laura wil en live.
Zo blij dat ik een soort input.
Kijk hoor, ik denk dat we gewoon naar hier kunnen gaan.
This talk is a reappearance. In the spring of 2016, Angela Sereno launched her publication, Residencies as Learning Environments, and invited me to present at this launch a response to a question. In relation to my stay of 3 different residencies, she asked me if I experienced multiple lines of development simultaneously, and if yes, is it possible for this to be represented, documented, and recorded? I found residency programs to have an exceptional relation to documentation, being that usually an end report, including images, is part of the agreement, and often a blog is involved. The being aware you shouldn't forget to take pictures, so to speak, transforms and influences one's actions, makes them visible, stages them, alters their shape, and sometimes even conjures them into being. How to tell what we should include or leave out of those registrations, since the residency is as manifold and familiar as daily life. The complexity makes reduction inevitable, and the dailiness deems a lot as not worth mentioning. I'd like to take a stab at displaying multiple lines of development that sprung from or passed through a particular artist in residency program at Wiels in Brussels. The slide in front of you shows a work that for me is the pick of the basket of documentation, since it once chose it as the ambassador to represent, often on its own, this entire 8-month residency. I like to use it now as a junction, a nodal point of these various lines, and depending on the focus and use, that it represents scavenging as well as yield, beyond as well as before, parallels crossing some forks, ghosts and recurring melodies. I remember researching variations of the gradient as an archetype of artificial horizons on a flat surface. While printing a completely unrelated work called Notes, a technical problem made the printer accidentally spit a green to pink gradient over one of them. I recreated the accident endlessly. Months later, the merged elements of notes and gradients disperse again, but not without bearing the mark of their previous marriage. This right image is a rather random snapshot made during an in-residency trip to Atelier de Moulage, or Studio of Casts. This left image stems from a practical book on architecture that I read in the evenings in bed. In it was a beautiful homage on the relationship between constructing a building and maquette modeling techniques. It reads, "The building is directly affected by the way its models are built and their constitutive pieces scaled and shaped. For example, the use of cardboard confers rectangularity, planarity, and symmetry in its subjects, while foam cutting confers asymmetry, curves, and twists. The building is directly affected by the way its models are built." It made me think of voodoo. Grubbing under the surface, there are my homegrown devil spine plants, which I collect because they copy themselves by nature. They traveled with me and lived in my residency studio. An inspiring copy from a book depicting Bruce Naumann's sculptural works. They were intended to function as studies or models for imagined monumental outdoor sculptures. A ghost of a work from the past. While making this work, years before, a text from George Perec accompanied my thoughts. which somehow folds back onto the stock now. I remember it like this. I forget that there is a wall. I no longer know what is behind the wall. I no longer know what is a wall. I no longer know that this wall is a wall. I no longer know what is a wall. What is that magic that renders obvious things invisible? That make a wall transform into a vista? That make an image disappear behind what it makes visible? That make a residency remain what it is and what it is not at the same time? An art project. While shooting quite random pictures in my studio one day, meant to generate proof that I was working, I accidentally shot the image of which a redo later on became this work we started with. This reminded me of Jutta Steyer's notes on cinematic post-production. She says, even though the post-production made it appear to be a supplement to production proper, its logic flipped back to influence and structure production itself. And of course, when our production includes to copy, recombine, and reduplicate, both our pre- and post-production is always producing. I'd like to take a brief moment to premiere this Sidelight series of work. It was made simultaneously to the project ambassador work, but was on the contrary never ever shown as documentation, until now, like a stowaway in the ship's hold of this talk. My work is akin with the dance between focus points, a wavering between the similar things appearing simultaneously, and a paradoxical wish to map multiple things at once. The simultaneous lines of the development of a residency can probably be represented, but simple documents will be inaccurate, and the undiminished ones become awkwardly bulging and swollen, and a challenge to read. When the logic of documenting flips back on the residency project itself, then documenting and presenting turn into one of the lines of development as such, possibly either enriching or infecting our practices. At best, it's like suddenly seeing Perek's walls, allowing the presentation to give itself to be seen and not disappear in the familiarity of the slideshow. At worst, it's like the sorcerer being caught in his own spell. Within the residency's particular economy of work and payment, one can come across smaller or larger discordant expectation. But sooner or later, we all want to reap some form of harvest of the project. In relation to this, I have a special interest in the importance of the so-called end reports. What is at stake there? Who chose this form of representation? How much depends on it? And what if the kind of yield we wish to mine from art residencies differs between artist, institute, and funder? Can our different standard of judging good art be bridged or even be recasted by these reports? All parties involved are likely to be aware that the value of a multiplex project like a residency is poorly displayed by a linear development report. However, in the case that artists make the documents for the institutes, who in their turn need to defend the investment they made to their funder, who again need it as ammunition to account for their decisions, the current state of affairs often adds up to mimicking a language of corporate result measurement that is exactly unable to represent an art project, since art's singular language derives much of its power by exactly not following that logic. But perhaps even more important, since the building is directly affected by the way its models are shaped, Mimicking this language creates a current that is directly involved in engineering the practice of art itself. One response to this could be collectively agreeing on the production and exchange of this report serving as smokescreens. To accept the impossibility of mapping the actual value as a statement. Doing so by radically using this corporate result language to our own benefit and understanding that as a kind of in-joke. However, I can't stop wondering what a language to represent artistic projects would look like that emerge out of the artistic field itself, out of its own practices, rhyming the language of its shows, its performances, and its publications. I would be curious for a glitchy and distorted version of the premise that the best way to describe the tale is by actually telling the tale. It is instructive, says anthropologist Michael Tausig, to compare the summary of a chant with the actual chant, for it demonstrates just how radical is the difference between these two modes of representation. The concise, abstracting mode of academic technical discourse, as compared with the ververbranzing, slow-paced chant, darting hither and thither in an almost random fashion, from detail to detail. When the building is directly affected by the way its models are built, these reports we exchange parallel magical mimesis. I wonder what they will look like when we shape them in accord to the attempt to reverse the current of its influence. Thanks.